out on the morning walk with my lovely bride, Michelle, and there's Timothy down there. Y'all met him. There's my new one, Everett. Figured we'd make the most of this morning walk and talk about life a little bit. Talk about relationships. I talk a lot about business. I talk about the logic of business. Talk about the things that you should do when you're hiring employees, how to analyze your business, how to make more money. But life is emotional, business is emotional. And what's more emotional than the relationship that you have with somebody else? So I thought that I would have Michelle come in and have us just have a little candid conversation about some of the struggles. I'd like for her to actually talk about some of my weaknesses and some of the things that I've worked on. But also the early days. Michelle met me when Storage Squad was about 3 months after concept. We had just figured out that we were actually going to start the business. I don't even think it was called Storage Squad when I met Michelle. And we started dating. So yeah, I'd just like to talk about some of the struggles early on and how important it was that Michelle supported me and we were on the same page, because we made a very significant sacrifice for our family for 5 years at least. Michelle supported me, really. She paid the rent, she paid the bills. I was making money, but I was pouring it all right back into the business. We were living extremely frugally. We lived in crappy basement apartments, small apartments, and not that good of neighborhoods. But we figured it out. And yeah, I mean, Michelle, what was it like in the early days before now, when we can go on walks and we can have a decent house and we can afford to do what we need to do? Talk about that first year, and then we'll talk about some of the things that were hard for us and some things that we did right.
You think the first year
Talk up,
and
speak
still
up.
in college, or the first
speak up.
year when we moved to Boston?
When we moved to Boston, let's talk about life. So we were out of college.
Yeah.
I told you that I'm going to take my Ivy League degree to become a entrepreneur and start a pickup and delivery storage business.
Yeah.
And I bought a crappy cargo van for $1,500 on Craigslist. We didn't have any money. We didn't have much to show for that.
Yeah. Life was more of a rat race. It was, we were on the go, and every day it was completely unpredictable. There was just no telling what might come up in a day. Whether we were going to be, I was doing an internship at the time, but and Nick was crashing with me and my 3 roommates who were nice enough to let him.
Yeah, if you don't know the story, I got in a
us.
box truck in 2013 and drove it to Boston, where my wife was doing an internship, and slept on her, in that house with her for 6 months, not really pulling my weight.
On and off. Yeah.
You were working a real job.
Yeah, I was still kind of a student, but neither here nor there.
Why did you decide? What made you decide that it was worth it, and what made you realize that what I was doing was the right thing?
I think it was kind of a bonus for me at the time. I didn't really think about it like that yet. It's only in retrospect that I kind of see it that way. But at the time, I just kind of thought, well, this is great. We were doing this long distance relationship, and you weren't there for the full 6 months, but you were in and out like a good week or two every month. So I was just kind of pumped that we got to spend so much time together despite being in a long distance relationship.
No, but I just mean the future, the fact that you were maybe going to get serious with this guy who didn't really have his stuff together. Let's talk about how we communicated that, and how I'm a natural born salesman, and it was my kind of job to sell you on trusting me.
Yeah.
And was it hard for you to trust me, knowing that I was going to do something totally different than what most people do with their lives? Most people go and get good jobs. All of our friends went and got jobs for 80, 90, 100 grand a year. They got these expensive cars. They got these really nice places to live. And we didn't have it. I didn't get a job.
Yeah. I guess it was easy to trust you because of the way you handled money. It trickled down into the smallest things, like Nick wouldn't get guacamole on his Chipotle, so I knew that that's the simple thing, but that meant a lot, because he might have been frugal, but it trickled into every area of his life because he was so committed. So just all those little things, I knew how serious you were about your business and everything you were pouring into it, and you included me.
So
I was really
we made the money
involved.
sacrifice. Talk about the time sacrifice that I was working a lot.
Oh, or around the clock. And I would get home from a long day on internship, and we'd be, walking to campuses and chalking together. I mean, that's how we spent our time. Or we were
And what she
handing
means
out
by
flyers.
chalking is literally writing sidewalk chalk
chalk.
advertisements on the ground.
Yeah, like we were covered in chalk. But though it was fun. I mean, it was kind of fun to be out together grinding, and we had a lot of Chinese afterwards, or good, takeout food. So that
Yeah,
made it more fun.
Michelle was right there sweating with me. She was, when crap hit the fan, if you know my story, and we got a lot more customers than we thought we were going to get in Boston, Michelle had to step in. Danny's brother flew in. I mean, you were doing customer service, you were doing box deliveries, you were in the warehouse watching over the warehouse guys. It was hard. It was hard.
I think it was easy to trust you because I guess bottom line is I got involved and I got invested, and because I had seen what was going on in college, I did have a little bit of an understanding of what the busy season was going to bring and what you were preparing for. So I wasn't blindly doing things. I did have an idea of what was coming, and getting involved. I had fun with it,
Yeah.
So I was a part of the team.
It was fun, and I mean, the sacrifices though were kind of crazy. We didn't, like I said, we just didn't have any money, but I can't believe looking back that you trusted me and that you wanted to stay with me when it was all just
Me
so,
either now.
it was so hard to believe that it was gonna work. I mean, me and Danny were so pumped up and we thought it was gonna work. But when you
never
looked
had
at
a
it and you looked at
doubt.
the
Yeah.
details, it was just, you should have told me to go get a job maybe.
No, I never had a doubt in my mind that it wasn't going to work out. I really didn't. I never had that feeling of like, what is Nick doing? It really just kind of, it seemed normal to me, even though.
You were supporting me
so
the whole way.
different, yeah.
From my point of view, Michelle was looking at what I was doing, and instead of telling me like, Nick, get a job, or Nick, why are you wasting so much time, or Nick, why don't you spend more time with me, or Nick, why can't we go to nice restaurants, or Nick, why can't we live in a decent place? It was always like, I'm on the same page. I know what you need to do. I know what we need to do. And really, it wasn't just me. You were there every step of the way, every single step.
Yeah.
So the best thing I ever did, the smartest thing I ever did, was get you 100% on board with what we were trying to do as a family, because I think we both saw the 5-year goal, the
Yeah.
5-year plan.
And that was something that you communicated a lot about. You always kind of had the future in mind, and I appreciated that about you. You kind of had a bigger picture mentality than most people our age, who are just kind of living day by day, taking moment by moment, living for the weekend. And I appreciated that you cared about the future.
So if you could give some advice to somebody who is exactly where I was 6 years ago, 8 years ago, what would you say to a let's start with the entrepreneur. Let's start with me, because a lot of people listening to this are in my shoes, trying to get something going. Maybe they have to try to figure out a way to get their significant other or somebody that they really care about to support them. What would you say is important there?
I think it starts with having the same morals and values. You check who you're with. Your situation could be totally different, but clearly ours was very financially focused in terms of how we had to scrap. And if your partner has different values in that area, it's going to be a battle.
So communicate those goals.
Yeah,
Get it running. Get everybody rowing the boat the same way, and understand it's not necessarily about what's in the checking account right now. It's the fact that 5 years from now, you'll be here. You'll be able to spend time with what really matters. And just to put it in perspective, our life right now is a lot different. We wake up in the morning, we have coffee together.
Yeah,
I work probably
run.
focused 30 hours a week with no commute,
Yep.
and the rest of the time I'm with you.
With me. Yeah, he gets to come down from his home office at 4 o'clock and help me with dinner, and he might hop back on his computer at, in the evening here and there, but it's definitely a better trade-off to not be alone all the time with 2 kids. We get to do our family together a lot more than most people for our age, so it's extremely valuable. And I think setting things to look forward to is a big deal. There were crazy seasons and busy seasons, but I mean, after the very first year in Boston, Nick planned a trip to Europe. It wasn't an expensive trip to Europe. We backpacked, we scrapped, but it was still.
We spent 2.5 weeks there for a total of $3,000 with flights included.
Yeah, but we had so much fun, and that we were celebrating the first successful year of Storage Squad out of college, and me graduating my internship and moving on from that. So we had a lot to celebrate. But that was something we were looking forward to the whole time. It was like, oh, just wait till this fall when we're going to go to Europe. So we were planning that. That gave me something to focus on that was, positive and something I was going to look forward to. So that'd be another piece of advice.
And the other thing that I think that you and I did really, really well is when you had a problem, when you were upset about something, you talked about it instantly.
Yeah.
We always sat down and figured it out instead of letting it simmer and get worse.
I think Nick was willing to listen until he was blue in the face to make sure he understood where I was coming from. Like, there was no shortage of him trying to understand my feelings. He never made me feel like guilty for the way I was feeling. He was willing to talk about it for hours and hours until we were back on the same page. That was huge. And just you can set expectations with your partner and talk things out, but sometimes you just have to accept that they can't understand what you're going through, and the road goes both ways. You have to come their way a little bit sometimes and sacrifice a little bit on your end too. So it goes both ways. You can't always expect your partner to understand and always expect them to be on board. Sometimes you gotta compromise with that.
Yeah, I think where everything would have fallen apart is if I would have totally been 100% obsessed with my business from day one. I wanted to grow it. I was working smart, but I was definitely not. It wasn't 80-hour a week all year. It was in the off season. We spent a lot of time together. We did a lot of things, and we had the priority of being together.
Yeah, we had a lot of quality time with our families and things like that. So it offset the sacrifices we were making. In those 80-hour weeks. Peek at Everett, okay.
Let's let them peek at Everett too.
It's pretty cute.
It's pretty cool.
He's 2 weeks old today.
He's 2 weeks old today. So yeah, I think we got a lot of war stories together. The one that comes to mind is box truck driving in Boston. I mean, we'd get done unloading these trucks and it'd be 3 a.m. And instead of paying if we didn't get them back to Ryder, the truck rental location, before 7:30 a.m. when they opened, we had to pay for another day. So we would unload all these trucks. We'd have about 10 trucks sitting there, and we'd have to make 3 or 4 trips to Ryder and back. And this was before Uber was big. This was back like 2013, so we couldn't get on an Uber. We had to have you come in the Civic and pick up 7 sweaty dudes.
I didn't have GPS on my phone. I mean, we're navigating around Boston and going through these tunnels, and you lose service. I didn't know where I was going.
We were racing the trucks through. So the tunnels at 3 a.m. So Boston at 3 p.m. is bumper to bumper, brutally miserable, and that's what we're in all day driving these trucks around. But at 3 a.m., the 45-minute drive is a 7-minute drive because there's nobody on the streets. So we literally got in these 6 Ryder box trucks. Actually, there's 4. It was me, you, Abate, Will, and Danny.
Yep.
And we were like, Michelle, you got to keep up. And she's like, just go slow and wait for me.
I said,
and Michelle,
wait for me because the tunnels the exits come quick.
She drove too slow. We got out of sight. And when we get in the tunnel with these box trucks, we hammered. Pedal to the metal, these things will do about 80. We're ripping through the tunnels, having a blast. And we look back and Michelle's gone.
And my phone was
Her phone was almost dead. She didn't have
GPS.
She didn't know how to use GPS. You had it. You didn't know how to use it.
That's true.
I've trained you by now. But yeah, it's just little things like that we look back and like, what were we doing, right? Running through with box trucks through the tunnel in Boston, just trying to make a few bucks.
Yeah. Those were,
And you were
those were
right
the
there.
crazy nights.
You were chasing box trucks around during the day with a bunch of sandwiches.
Oh yeah, I mean, we didn't afford Subway yet, so it was like.
And we couldn't afford to have our drivers stop working to eat, so we had to literally
So I
take
was
them food.
hand making, deli meat sandwiches, and then chasing down, again, without GPS, chasing down these box trucks on all these crazy one-way streets, and guys were like, at a stoplight running, and trying to catch me while I'm trying to catch them, and hand sandwiches out the window, and I mean, it's so comical now.
And I remember being at that warehouse in Everett, Mass, and it was in a not a good neighborhood at all, a scary neighborhood, and Michelle wouldn't go outside of the outside that place at night.
I would not get out of the truck alone. It was so creepy. It looked like a Saw warehouse, like the movie from the movie Saw.
Yeah, we
like
slept.
that.
We slept in that warehouse for a week. I slept in there by myself for about 4 days. So
Yeah, it was creepy.
yeah, it's been an awesome ride. It's been an awesome ride, and now looking back at it, I think you and I can both agree that it was the best thing that we ever did, the best sacrifice that we ever made.
Yeah, and I think all this just goes to show that you can include your partner. It doesn't have to be like they're twiddling their thumbs waiting for you to get home. A lot of the fun of looking back at all this was just the camaraderie with all the guys. Like, I was the only girl around, but I was up making chicken Alfredo at 3 a.m. in our little basement apartment. Sharing in all the stories from the day, all the funny things that happened, and I was a part of all of it, and so
I think the
that
moral of
made it
this
fun.
story, if you could take one thing away from this video, it would just be that you have got to get support from your significant other. If your significant other does not agree, does not support what you're doing, you're never going to be able to make it work. I couldn't imagine dealing with the stress that I dealt with at work and then coming home to more stress and pressure from you. I came home to nothing but support and love from you.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for that, I never would have been able to deal with the stress. I never would have been able to take the risk
Yeah.
to build the business. So
Absolutely, and you built me up a lot. I mean, Nick gave me a lot of credit in all of this. He would tell me things like, you're the only reason I can do all of this. You make me more confident.
you're paying the bills.
Yeah, you're holding down the fort, and this wouldn't be possible. And so he gave me a lot of credit for the success that at the end of every season.
And we talked a lot about the future, and that's what kept us excited.
Yeah, Nick was always very intentional about where our relationship was going. So even before we were engaged and we were just dating, I never had any questions about where we were going to be eventually. So he was very committed to me, and when push came to shove, I was always the first priority. So he never let that slip. As much as the business needed to take priority at times, if it really it was.
And since I made that sacrifice on the majority of times, you knew that when I asked for something or when I needed to do something, you could just trust that I was looking out for our best interest.
Yeah.
A story that comes to mind that tells that is when we finally got our first apartment together. It was so in Boston, the leases all change over on September 1st, and actually that coincides with our busiest time. We were delivering like 1,000 customers in one day on September 1st. So Michelle had to basically move us into an apartment on her own. Aside from carrying the heavy furniture, she cleaned the apartment, she secured the apartment, she went and did all the paperwork involved with securing the apartment, and then I was not there for the first 3 days.
And
You were living in it
gross.
yourself.
I mean, there was a grocery store nearby, and I like walked to the grocery store and wheeled a steam cleaning vacuum like half a mile just to do the carpets.
And then that night, I think at 1 a.m., I sent
raining.
over a group of 4 storage squad employees that had flown in from a different city to work with us nonstop because we had nowhere to send them to take a shower.
So
I said, can you get the shower ready? I'm going to send over some squad guys. And I couldn't go. I didn't have time to leave the warehouse.
I didn't know some of them.
So I was sending in 4 dudes that she didn't know. And we definitely had an argument.
Yeah,
definitely had a fight.
They came in, it was raining, so they came in with like muddy flip-flops, and I just steam cleaned, and I had just cleaned the shower, and then these 4, dirty men just like take over my apartment. I don't even really know them, just like, Nick, what the heck, what are you doing to me here?
It was tough.
But we got engaged 2 weeks later, so safe
Couple
to say
days.
I stuck around.
A couple days later.
September 13th, yeah.
We got engaged as soon as we could when I moved into that apartment because I knew that I just wanted to seal the deal. Should have probably gotten
I-
engaged before that, but
I told him I wouldn't live with him unless we were engaged.
yeah, she wouldn't live with me.
So I'm not on trial here. You're in it for the long haul for moving in. So
Yeah,
that was the deal.
yeah. Best
But,
decision ever made.
Yeah. Absolutely.
She had a baby a week ago. Look at that.
Thank you, honey. Hi there.
So yeah, it's fun, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. So do the right things when you're. Just communicate the right way. Get on the same page. Anything else you want to share, sweetie?
I was just gonna say that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It does get easier, and
Speak up.
it very naturally, my involvement has faded as the company got bigger and as they hired more full-time employees and they weren't on the ground as much. My involvement kind of naturally shifted, and now I kind of miss those days of you kind of miss being on the ground. And
So your lesson there would be relish it and enjoy the
yeah,
ride.
enjoy it. It's fun. It's fun to have these stories. It's fun to talk about. It's something we'll be excited to tell our kids about. These kind of early days. We've told you a couple stories. We have at least 100.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of stories that are just so fun to think about now. So it gets easier. Life goes on. It changes and shifts very naturally as it should. And
But
it's better.
we've also seen our friends just totally get so obsessed with work and their business that they gave up everything else.
yeah.
Some good friends of ours have already gotten a divorce because the husband was just totally obsessed with business and the job and the work and the career. So like anything, you can get so addicted and so obsessed with doing business. And the advice would just be to have some balance.
Yeah.
Have some balance so that you can keep what's important in perspective, because this right here is what's important. Right there and right here.
We're at the big tree.
We're at our favorite big tree.
Thought Timothy might want to see it.
So yeah,
So yeah.
thanks for stopping in, honey.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hope it helped. If anyone wants to talk to me,
Let me know. I'll
let
hook
me
you up.
know.